Have you ever stood on the edge of a battlefield in your imagination and wondered who decides whether a warrior's soul lives on to feast or is cut short in the blood-soaked mud? In Norse mythology, that choice belongs not to fickle chance, but to Odin and the company of supernatural women known as the Valkyries. They ride through clouds and smoke, weaving fate and war together, and their story reveals a blend of terror, beauty, and destiny. We will travel from the screaming loom of battle to Odin's great hall and discover how these choosers of the slain decide who must die. To understand the Valkyries, we must first see them as weavers of fate. In the Saga Njal's saga, there is a poem known as Daradal where 12 Valkyries gather inside a stone hut before the Battle of Clontarf. They are not sewing a fine tapestry. They are using human intestines for thread, severed heads as weights, and swords and arrows as shuttles. As they chant, they foresee the crimson outcome. They will cross the warp with a crimson weft. Shields will shatter, and swords will gnaw through armor. One of their verses makes clear that only the Valkyries can choose the slain. The image is gruesome, but it captures an essential truth. These beings are not simply escorts. They actively weave the fate of warriors. This weaving is reminiscent of the Norns, the beings who govern destiny. And the prose Edda, the Valkyries' gunner, Rota and Skuld, ride to every battle to choose the slain and decide victory. The same text explains that they serve in Valhalla, bring drink and see to the ale cups. The juxtaposition of their gruesome weaving with their later role as servers hints at the duality at the heart of the Valkyries. They are both terrifying and nurturing, warlike and hospitable. While the Valkyries are primarily associated with war, their stories often intertwine with love and tragedy. Sigrún, whose name means victory rune, is introduced in the poem Helgakvida Hundingsbanad Set as a Valkyrie reborn from a previous life. She appears to the hero Helgi Hundingsbane after he has slaughtered his enemies. She embraces and kisses him, and he promises to fight for her hand. Sigrún's father has promised her to another king, so Helgi assembles an army, invades the rival's kingdom, and marries Sigrún. However, the union is short-lived. Sigrún's brother Dagr sacrifices to Odin to avenge his father and brothers. Odin gives him a spear with which he kills Helgi at a sacred grove. Sigrún curses her brother to a life of misery, and Helgi is taken to Valhalla. In a poignant scene, Sigrún visits Helgi's barrow. His body is stained with blood from her tears. They spend a night together before he returns to the Hall of the Slain. This story illustrates how even Valkyries, though agents of fate, are subject to Odin's will and the inexorable pull of destiny. Another famous Valkyrie is Brynhildr, or Sigurdrifa. In the Völsunga saga, Brynhildr defies Odin by granting victory to the wrong king. She later recounts to the hero Sigurdur that two kings fought, Helmgunnar, an old warrior to whom Odin had promised victory, and Agnar, his younger rival. Brynhildr struck down the king Odin favored, and Odin, in vengeance, stuck a sleep thorn into her and decreed that she should never again have victory but be given away in marriage. Brynhildr vows that she will never marry a man who knows fear. Odin's punishment places her within a ring of fire, where she sleeps until Sigurdur rides through the flames and awakens her. Their subsequent tragedy forms the heart of the Völsunga saga. Brynhildr's story shows that Valkyries can act independently of Odin, but suffer when they cross his will. Stories of Valkyries also depict them as swan maidens. According to folklore recorded in the sagas, a Valkyrie could take the form of a swan by wearing a feathered cloak called an alftarm. If a man captured her cloak while she bathed, he could compel her to grant a wish or become his wife. In Volundark Vida, 3 brothers encounter 3 Valkyries spinning flax on the shore after having laid aside their swan shifts. The brothers seize the garments, marry the maidens, and live with them for 7 years before the women fly away. These tales tie the Valkyries to wider European motifs of supernatural wives who can transform into birds. The destination of those chosen by the Valkyries depends on more than bravery. In the poem Grimnismal, Odin, disguised as Grimnir, tells young Agnar that the goddess Freyja rules over a meadow called Fólkvangr, where she chooses half of those who die in battle, while Odin receives the other half. When Freyja rides to battle, she takes the first pick. This division may reflect an older system of initiation or an attempt to balance the war goddess Freyja with the war god Odin. In any case, it underscores that the afterlife for warriors was not a monolith, but had multiple destinations. Odin's hall Valhalla is described in Grimnismal, and the prose Edda as a vast building with spears for rafters and shields for shingles. It has 540 doors, each wide enough for 800 warriors to march through side by side. Each morning, the Einherjar, the army of one, don their war gear and fight one another for sport. Each evening they are healed, feast on the resurrecting boar, say Hrimnir, and drink mead served by the Valkyries. The mead flows from the udder of the goat Heidrun. Odin himself does not eat, subsisting solely on wine. The Valkyries thus shift from war spirits to hospitable servers, highlighting their dual role. Freyja's halls as Hrungnir within Fólkvangr is less detailed in the sources, but she is said to receive fallen warriors with honor comparable to Odin's. Some scholars consider Freyja to be a prototype of the Valkyries, as she rides into battle and chooses the slain. Others suggest that the division of souls reflects different cults or social groups, with Odin and Freyja each building forces for their own purposes. Regardless, the Valkyries serve both deities, reinforcing that the warrior afterlife is governed by a collective of powerful figures. The legacy of Odin and the Valkyries extends far beyond medieval Scandinavia. In later folklore, the Valkyries' more sinister traits softened. They became noble maidens bearing heroes to heaven. Richard Wagner's opera Die Walküre popularized the image of armored women with winged helmets riding through the clouds to the rousing music of the Ride of the Valkyries. The name Valkyrie has been used for military operations and appears in films, games, and literature symbolizing bravery and fatalism. Yet the original myths remind us that these figures are far more complex. They embody the tension between free will and destiny, between love and duty, and between the beauty and horror of war. What ultimately drives Odin to send the Valkyries into the fray is his dread-driven desire to amass the best warriors for the final battle against chaos. Through the Valkyries, he shapes the fates of men, rewarding some with eternal feasting and condemning others to oblivion. The Valkyries in turn demonstrate agency within and against Odin's will. They can fall in love, defy orders, and choose compassion over obedience. But there is always a cost. Their stories ask us to ponder whether destiny is woven by divine hands or whether our own choices play a part in the tapestry of fate. As you reflect on these myths, consider the opening question once more. Who decides who must die? In the Norse imagination, the answer lies in the flight of mysterious women across the sky, in a god who gathers an army for the end of the world, and in the threads of fate that are woven long before the battle is joined. Their tales endure because they force us to confront the inevitability of death and the hope for meaning beyond it. The next time you hear thunder or the wings of birds overhead, perhaps you'll wonder whether Valkyries still ride